Hey, how's it going, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at something a little bit different. No, this is not Bannerlord. We are taking a look at a brand new game that has just been announced. This is Anvil Empires. This is a brand new medieval game that, according to the Steam page, is a massive multiplayer game where thousands of players work together to build an empire, wage war, and conquer in a persistent online world. March along armies of players in a massive melee battle and large-scale sieges. Now that sounds absolutely amazing, and I feel like a lot of games do put this much hype into bringing their game up to a golden standard and then really struggle to deliver on that. However, Anvil Empires gives me a little bit more hope because this is made by Siege Camp Studios. You may remember that name or have heard of it, as this is the developer that has been working on Foxhole. And if you haven't heard of Foxhole before, then again, their Steam page reads, Foxhole is a massive multiplayer game where thousands of players shape the outcome of a persistent online war. That game itself is set in World War II, so that game has a completely different style than what we're going to probably see in Anvil Empires. In Foxhole, you're focusing on moving, ammunition around with logistical trucks. You're bringing people to the front. You're developing tanks and new weaponry, which can change the course of the war itself. I believe they recently added in tons of different types of like rail artillery and really exciting stuff on that map. And you're kind of moving around a lot more on the actual campaign map. I have honestly really only ever heard about good things of Foxhole. I haven't played it personally since the very early days, I believe when it was back in early access, but the game itself is currently sitting around 81% of positive reviews overall on Steam, and I can definitely see how people get so invested in these type of games because you are just a small cog in a larger war, and you are maybe just refilling maybe supplies or pushing a front line in one part of the grander scale war, but every small change that you do is affecting it. And I believe in Foxhole itself, the wars go on for roughly, I think they've been fine-tuning it over the past couple iterations of the game, but they last roughly around about 4 to 6 weeks. And then whatever side has claimed the most territory wins that, and it just starts all over again. Players can choose sides once again and maybe fight for the opposite empire. And honestly, all that stuff in a World War II setting sounds amazing, but you guys know me, I am much more about my ancient history, my medieval history, and that's why Anvil Empires excites me so much, because if they can achieve what they've done in Foxhole, they can take all the feedback they got from the game and apply it to a medieval world. Oh my god, is it going to be crazy. Over on the Steam page, they do also state that the idea is to get the servers themselves up to 1,000 people. This doesn't mean that only 1,000 people can join the war in the 4 to 6 weeks, depending on if they're going to go along that same sort of cycle that they do on Foxhole. This just means that 1,000 people can be in the world at the same time, and this may increase or decrease, as they get closer and closer towards the development of the game. And honestly, I actually think this is a really good set of numbers for a server to have. Again, one, you're always worried about filling it. I think one of the problems with a lot of the games like this is they do aim for the world is reliant on players, and if you don't have the players, the world feels very flat and empty. I think having 1,000 people and maps designed around that is going to be a great way of pushing forward, and maybe that's something they can increase if the game does get really, really popular. But I think Foxhole has shown that that's probably a good number to aim towards. And also, the whole medieval world is going to dramatically change how stuff works. You're no longer going to be moving troops through logi trucks to the front line. The maps are probably going to be much more condensed, and you're going to be grouping up with people rather than sending probing attacks like you do in Foxhole to kind of scout the enemy defenses and then build up for a big assault. You're going to be kind of forming up into armies in this. You're going to be moving up towards enemy siege camps. You're going to be building your own siege camps. You're going to be gathering resources to build trebuchets and siege towers to actually attack the enemy position. And I think having 500 people on either side, again, it's not always going to be balanced, but I think having 500 people on either side is going to give you that ability to mount defenses on several different fronts. It's going to allow your whole supply chain to actually be effective, have people using horses and carts to move supplies, having people gathering them supplies, having people at the metalworks and iron foundries building them. And honestly, I think that's a really good kind of set of players to actually aim for. They have also stated as well that there are plenty of ways to actually affect the war effort in its entirety. You don't just have to be a frontline soldier or maybe a builder. They've stated that you can engage in farming, hunting, husbandry, which is obviously the ability to take care of animals, and there's more to support the war effort outside of that, such as trading with nearby player settlements to further optimize your economy. And this suggests that they're not going to be going down the same route as Foxhole when it comes to the factions. I think as of right now, there are just 2 factions fighting an internal war in Foxhole. However, it seems like you're going to be able to actually maybe have multiple kingdoms in Anvil empires. Now, whether these are just sub-factions inside of a greater war machine that you're supporting, there could still just be 2 major kingdoms, and then you can go off and kind of create your own little clan, and then maybe you get called to fight when the war does erupt or something along them lines. Or maybe they're going to go with multiple empires and players can really dictate the sheer scale of the wars. Maybe it's multiple kingdoms fighting one another for supremacy, or maybe it is just 2 kingdoms and you're all part of it, whether you are in your own little village or clan, whatever it is, you're still just supporting that greater war machine. We're going to have to find out, but there's going to be plenty of ways to go ahead and build up your economy to support the war effort, and that's the main focus of the game. And then they later go on to talk about the actual medieval logistics of the game itself. It's going to be much more focused on actually, supplying that army on the move. If you push into enemy territory, you're going to have to build up that supply line to bring them new weapons, new food, and other resources to help them push on and keep that advance going into enemy territory. Now, this is of course going to lead on to, the ability to actually raid these supply lines. From what we're seeing from the screenshots and everything else, it seems like a lot of the defenses are going to have to be built up by the players. So building forts and supply positions, into enemy lines is going to be something very important. But that's going to need wood, that's going to need stone and other resources to actually build up them defenses. And then you're going to also need people there to actually guard it, prevent it from being raided and taken over. They have also stated as well that there's going to be custom equipment such as siege ladders, battering rams to use to actually break down the enemy walls and also take them over. I'm sure we're going to see a whole wealth of different equipment as well when it's going to, as it gets more developed. We're probably going to be seeing stuff like siege towers and also trebuchet, catapults, ballistas, other types of medieval siege engineering. They also haven't mentioned how combat's going to work. Of course, in Foxhole, you're just shooting people, and a lot of the time you can kind of take people out from a long distance away. And granted, you're going to be able to probably have a bow in Anvil Empires, but I imagine the main meat of the combat and where you're going to have to really get stuck in is going to be sword and shield. It's going to be really interesting to see how they go down with that. Is it going to be more of a directional style of combat, like stuff like Mordheim or Bannerlord or other games similar to that, or they're going to go for more of kind of like a timing kind of movement, like just slash, you press left click and you swing your sword, you press right click, you bring up your shield. It's going to be very interesting to see how that develops, and that's going to be one of the key, I think, selling points of the game. Granted, of course, supply lines economy is a big focus point of the game, but when it comes down to it, you want to be the one leading as a berserker through the siege towers, smashing, clearing a path for the rest of your soldiers. So the combat, of course, has to be good. And honestly, I am just super excited. I've been looking for an excuse to get into a game like this, and I'm going to be following it very, very closely because Foxhole could never grip me. I always found myself a bit lost for what to do. And I feel like Anvil Empires is going to do a bit of a better job when it comes to actually kind of finding your purpose in the world, because it's going to be much easier to find these large assaults because you can just follow these supply trains to the front lines and then you're joining up into this big group of soldiers rather than all these separate probing attack. And I'm just extremely excited for the game in its entirety. So let me know what you guys think of it down below in the description. Is this something you'd like to see on the channel when it does finally release, or when we get more information? Please do let me know. I know a lot of you guys love medieval games and history, so this is definitely one to watch. And of course, drop a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We are currently closing in on 210,000 subscribers, which would be absolutely amazing to hit over the next month or two. I'll also leave a link to the Steam page down below in the description so you can check it out for yourself, and I'll see you guys in the next one.